The first artist we're going to talk about is Rosa Bonheur. She is a French animal painter. She is very much involved with the art movement known as realism, in the sense of her style is extremely realistic. And here we have a portrait of her painted by one of her students, who at the end of her life became her companion. So we have the portrait of Rosa Bonheur. As an animal painter, what Rosa Bonheur does is take the techniques that a male artist may use to learn human anatomy and apply them to animals. So she's not just looking at the outer being of the animal. She is studying anatomy. She is observing the animals in nature or in their habitat, as it were. Of course, a lot of them are domestic animals, so she might go to a horse fair. Or she dissects bodies. She goes to butcher shops and studies the anatomy of the animals. So she really, really knows this, and it shows up in her work. She does have an unconventional upbringing, and so her mother dies when Rosa is about 11 years old. Her father is an artist, a minor artist, and he's a member of the group called the St. Simeons, which is a radical group, a progressive social group, and among the many other things that they do promote women's equality and even the idea of androgynous clothing. So this is probably where Rosa Bonheur, in a sense, gets her start, just the idea that she could have this kind of career, and realizing that it's possible for a woman to wear something besides skirts when it's practical. She is a very unconventional person. She wears trousers when she goes to the stockyards and probably the butcher shops and the horse fairs and wherever she is going to see the animals, just mucking around in the dirt. It's not very practical when you're wearing very long skirts and they're trailing in the muck and you've got petticoats on and you're weighed down by that. Now, she had to get permission from the police. She had a permit that allowed her to wear trousers. Otherwise, she could have been, I guess, arrested. She did remain unmarried her entire life. And you'll find that this happens sometimes with women who want a career. I know that was always one of the questions. If you are married, should you be allowed to work? I remember the first one, I had a job briefly in a public school system, and when I got pregnant, I was fired. And I remember somebody said to me, well, you're lucky that they let you work when you were married, because some decades earlier, if a school teacher got married, she would lose her job. So some women made that choice to dedicate themselves to their career. And you'll see that some women get married and some don't, and they make different life decisions. She did quite well. She made lots of money. She eventually was independent, and she was able to purchase an estate. She did some things that were quite radical, like bobbing her hair, cutting her hair shorter, and smoking cigarettes. I guess they didn't know how bad that was for you back then. Here's another portrait of her with her arms around a bull or an ox or some kind of bovine anyway. And one of her strategies, because of course the press was interested in her and she had to present herself in a certain way, she maintained femininity in her interviews, in her photographs. She did not allow herself to be photographed in her trousers. And when she presented herself in the public, she would always wear a dress. You see her wearing a dress in her portraits and photographs and everything that's done for her. I said photographs, I guess they're all paintings. She asserts that the trousers are a working costume that is necessary for the type of work that she does, and it's not her normal, regular garment. Politically, she's conservative. She's a monarchist. But she does seem to want some freedoms for herself that most women did not have. and she's able to do that because of her success at her type of art. I don't have a picture of her first salon painting. This one has sheep in it. It's a much later picture, as you can see, but I just put it in for the illustration. But in 1841, she exhibited in the Salon, and it said that this was two charming groups of a goat, sheep, and rabbits, so animals. The Salon, as I think we've said this before, the Salon is the annual exhibition of the Royal Academy when it's royal, and the French Academy when it's not royal, but it's the Salon is the official exhibition of the French Academy, and almost every year, unless there is some political unrest or an invasion of the Prussians, which happens later, that they can't put on an exhibition, but virtually every year they have a juried show. And to be recognized as a professional artist in France, you really had to be juried into that show. So she is. Her work is accepted into the Salon. One of her first great successes was this painting, Plowing in Narbonnais. And you can see the oxen pulling the plow. This was created in 1848, and it won a gold medal in the 1849 Salon when it was displayed. And it was even purchased by the government to hang in the Louvre. One of the critics says something very interesting. Mademoiselle Rosa paints almost like a man. And you will find that that is a motif that goes through the history of art. When someone wants to praise a woman artist, they say, she paints like a man. I don't know if they get, well, they do. The underlying assumption is a woman's art would be inferior. So if she's a good artist, she's an exception. She's painting like a man. Weaker art is a woman's art, but here we see some of the details, and this is, extremely realistic, as you can see. She really does understand the anatomy, and she goes through, of course, many, many drawings, and yet there's that feeling of life. It's the feeling of the animals hard at work in nature. They often say that this shows the nobility of laboring animals, which is an interesting word to use. The idea that there is nobility in work, which is almost a contradiction in terms since traditionally nobles don't do much work. But there is something honorable about the animals who are helping us create the food that we will be eating. They're hard at work just like the people, even more so. There are some influences on this. I have not been able to find a reproduction of this drawing in George Sand's novel, The Devil's Pool. And I haven't read the book, so there are some influences. I have not found a reproduction of this, but it's mentioned a drawing in George Sand's book, The Devil's Pool. And right there, I might mention that several women novelists took male names, nom de plumes, in order to publish. Because if they were coming out with a female name for the author, the book would not be accepted for publication and probably would not be purchased. Another example is the 17th century cattle painter Paulus Potter, and also she is part of this rural tradition of the realist artists such as Courbet and Mallet, where they go out and they paint nature, and Mallet particularly paints people working in nature. So here we see the Plowing in Narbonnais and the 17th century example, which is basically the cows standing, or in one case reclining, kneeling, I guess, whatever, in the landscape. In the case of Bonheur, they are actually at work, and you have that feeling of movement and labor. And I tried to find a picture of a Courbet where you see nature. It shows a lot of these wooded scenes. Now, another one of her very, very famous paintings, probably the most famous one of all after it was created, was the Horse Fair. And this was created in 1855. As we'll see, there's two versions of it. It had international fame in both England and the United States, where it's interesting, Rosa Bonheur is French, but she has tremendous fame in England and also with this work in the United States. We'll talk about that in a minute, but one thing is the English do seem to love their animals or be very, very interested in them. And so animal painters did very, very well in England. And I go out on a limb and say she's the best of them all. There's a detail of the horse fair. And as you can see, you have the horses in action. So they're running all of these horses around, presumably, so people can choose which horses they want to buy. There are two versions. I don't think from reproduction you can really tell which is which, but the size is very different. The original one was nearly 16 feet long, which is huge, and it is in the Metropolitan Museum in New York today. The other one is about a quarter of the size of that, so about 4 feet, and it's now in the National Gallery in London. It was very, very popular. There were engravings made of it, so even people who hadn't seen the painting would know the composition. Would probably buy a copy for themselves and hang it on their wall or whatever. Now, one of the things about making these very large animal paintings is that, and the realist artists did this. Courbet, for example, painted a 9-foot long picture of the funeral of his grandfather. And that was just not done. If you were going to use a huge size, you were supposed to have it be some kind of classical, mythological, or religious or allegorical subject, what they called history painting. Remember, history painting with Angelica Kauffman. So history painting was supposed to be big, and pictures of animals and genre pictures of ordinary people and things, they were supposed to be smaller. So what is Rosa Bonheur doing when she does a 16-foot picture of this? She is claiming the importance of an animal picture, that it's just as important as a picture of Hercules or Zeus or the Madonna and Child or something like that, or something in ancient Roman history. So, this is something that is a innovation in a sense, and is obviously a successful one. You can see the animals in movement, in action. So we have that grand scale as though it were a history painting. We have dramatic action. We have the knowledge that her anatomical studies bring. This isn't just somebody who's looking at the outward appearance of the horses. She really knows how the bones and the muscles work. And she's done very, very close observation of the animals in life. I mean, she's going to places like these horse fairs and creating her work of art. Now, you have to realize, I know tonight we often think about people just going and painting from life. Undoubtedly should be doing sketches and putting these together in a studio. They are, as we've said before, very realistic images at the time when realism was in vogue. It took 18 months worth, numerous life studies, and once again she received an award, received a first-class medal at the Salon. So her work was recognized. She was also supposed to receive the Cross of the Legion of Valor, but then they said, a woman can't have that. So although she was supposed to receive it, she was denied it. However, some years later, almost 9 years later, in 1864, it was awarded, and the Empress Eugenie delivered the award herself to Bonheur's studio. She was the first woman to receive the Cross of the Legion of Valor. Another first In 1894, she became an officer of the Legion of Honor, and she's the first woman to receive this honor. So these are national honors that are given to prominent people who have done outstanding things in different fields. And generally, they're not given to women. So she really had to excel in the quality of her work and have it recognized. This is called Highland Raid, or sometimes it's called a Scottish Raid. I've seen it called both things, dating from 1860. And I was able to take some details of it. It's in the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C. Although it's not listed on their website, so it may be that it was on loan or something when I saw it. But at any rate, I do have some details of it. Bonheur did go to Scotland, and in 1855 she went to Scotland to meet Queen Victoria, who loved animal pictures, and she did a number of sketches, and some of these sketches became paintings with Scottish themes that we see throughout later part of her life. The Highland Raid, it's been pointed out, is kind of anachronistic, that the Scots were not doing cattle raids in the 1860s or the 1850s. This was something that had been from about 100 years before, perhaps, or before that. But it gives her a wonderful opportunity to show all of these different types of herding animals. You've got your goats and your very furry Highland cattle, in really a kind of emotional quality about them. You have, of course, always the excellent study of anatomy, the textures of the paint, and the different textures of the different fur of the animals, the different hair of the animals. Very close observation, and I thought it was interesting because we really do sense the unrest and the emotion of the animals when those raiders who are in the dark in the background, you see them sort of silhouetted, are swooping down on the herd. One of the things about Bonheur's animal paintings, and that's why I said they are the best. That's an opinion, but they're certainly excellent. None of them seem to be very sentimental, and she doesn't usually make the animals anthropomorphic. In other words, the emotions they're feeling are what she would have observed in animals. And let me give you an example. This is a male artist, a little bit older than she is, in England. He's the most popular 19th century British animal painter named Edwin Landseer. He's particularly known for painting dogs, and that's not the big part of Bonheur's oeuvre or body of work. But I can show you what I mean when I say anthropomorphic and perhaps sentimental. The picture at the top is it's a satire or a spoof. It's intended to be humorous, and it became very, very popular, laying down the law, in which the poodle is the judge. And so you have this kind of anthropomorphic satire of a law court and supposedly of some actual people. Bonheur doesn't do something like that. Her animals are animals. And then, this very lovely picture that I have here just called Saved. And you have the big dog that has obviously dived into the water and brought out the little girl. Until I read the title of it, I thought she was dead and that he was, trying to protect her. But he's saved her from drowning, evidently. And it's a beautiful picture, really. Many people would say, oh, it's just too sentimental. So I will say it shows sentiment. In other words, it does show the proper emotion in a proper British, or anybody else, but a British gentleman of the 19th century would want to show the proper sentiment. It's only in the 20th century that we call such things sentimental. But Bonheur never does that. Her animals are, like I say, really anatomically correct, and they behave like animals, and they are animals in their own world. They may be, animals that are being sold, as in the horse fair, or animals that are being raided, as in the Highland raid, but they are in the natural habitat, as it were. When I say natural, I'm including, things that man has imposed on the animal. I did find a picture of a Landseer cattle picture, and the wild cattle of Chillingham. It dates about 7 years after Bonheur's cattle raid, and I thought it was really interesting to me because the composition of it is almost a reverse of her. It really is so close to the detail that I had taken of the cattle raid. The bull is turning his head in a very similar manner. The cow's head is coming in, and of course, little calf is in the position where you have those goats or sheep. So I don't know if there was an influence there, which it would be from Landseer, from Bonheur would be influencing Landseer if there were. We're looking at another one of these pictures that may have been inspired by her Scottish sojourn, and in this case, it's about 10 years after the Scottish sojourn. Sheep by the sea. And this is a very small picture. The Highland Raid is a very large picture. This is a very small picture, so she did all different scales, appeal to different buyers. And so we have the Scottish theme of the sheep out on the coast with very thick textured paint, which relates to the very thick wool of the sheep. This was actually commissioned by the Empress Eugenie of France. And it shows, as we said, the animals in nature, calm, doing what animals do.